thing because I actually can pronounce their names. I don't know if you've looked at their names on our and wondered about that. But this is going to be a magical morning here. I think this topic is so great. Nobody's ever spoken on it before here at the Inside Edge. It's something that's really very, very current. And I really believe that their book that they're writing is going to be fantastic and that they'll be interviewed on all the major morning talk shows across the world. So I think we're having a preview of a wave that is beginning this morning here at the Inside Edge. Leonard Simcik and Rick Bronick are our speakers. Yes, I got it out. Their new book is called Wake Up, Grow Up, and Show Up, Calling Men into the 21st Century. And it really is it's a time when men are feeling very uncomfortable about even saying anything to a woman. I mean, it's getting to be a little crazy out there. So we get to really hear from the experts this morning about this amazing subject. Please welcome Leonard and Rick.
Whoops. How'd that happen? There we go. Okay. Good morning, Inside Edge. Good morning. I want to thank Diana and Ted and Kay and Ray for being so kind and inviting us to speak here. Leonard?
Yeah, so I was telling Rick, we should at least say to you why we're so passionate about men's work. And because this has been a passion for both of us for many years, 30 plus years. So for me, my father left the family when I was a young boy, but he gave me a gift. And the gift was the desire to be a far different father to my own kids than I had, and to really get involved in men's work. And if it wasn't for his leaving the family, I wouldn't be here and really doing all this research as a therapist and working with men, or I wouldn't even be here today talking to you. And I'm so grateful. I just want to give an acknowledgement to my buddy Rick, because I have learned so much. When you write a book with somebody, like I wrote with Mari, you learn so much. We're going to talk about connection, and just working with Rick has just been a real blessing, and I have grown and expanded just in the process of writing. So,
thank you, Leonard. And my story is a little different. One of my attractions to men's work is that I have 3 daughters, 3 granddaughters, 2 ex-wives, and a current fabulous partner. We don't do boys in my family. So I have a deep attraction to men and men's work, and truly my own healing has started and completed and continues, very much, very strongly in a circle of men. So that's my attraction, and my attraction to this. Leonard?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about what the hell is going on with men and what can we do about it. And Rick and I have been working on, next slide.
There we go.
There we go. We've been working on this book, Wake Up, Grow Up, and Show Up, Calling Men into the 21st Century. I went to Barnes & Noble on Sunday, and I says, I'd like to look at the men's section. So she took me to the clerk took me to the social studies. There were 3 rows of books on women. There was not one book on men. Not one. And so we've been called to put all of our experience and what we've been through this, by getting this book. Now, have any of you seen the Gillette commercial? There's been a lot of controversy about the Gillette commercial. Well,
Just came out a week ago.
let's take a look at it. Oops, back up.
There we go.
You got to press the button.
We don't have internet? Do we have internet connection?
No, you just press the button.
So you do have to have internet.
No, it's not on the internet. It's LinkedIn, so we should just press the... It played a little while ago.
It did. I know. Technical difficulties.
Can you push something on the computer?
There we go.
There we go.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual
Toxic
harassment.
masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it? We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy? What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie. Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool. Not cool.
Some already are. In ways big
Yo, men.
and small. But some is not enough.
It's not how we treat each other, okay?
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
The best men can be. That was a very powerful commercial when it came out. There's a lot of controversy about it, and some of the controversy was because of the word toxic masculinity. And so men interpreted masculinity was toxic, rather than seeing masculinity is really there's beautiful things about masculinity. It's that some of our behaviors as men are toxic. And I think one of the things that they missed in the commercial was to look at all the wonderful qualities that men do have and maybe have highlighted a bit in there. But I put this commercial on my Facebook, and I got pushback. So one man said to me, "This is bullshit, goodbye." So I got unfriended. So we're going to get a lot of pushback in some of this here, but as we start really challenging some of the traditional masculine norms that have been established in our society. So Rick's going to talk about some of the positive qualities.
So our message isn't that men are harmful or inherently bad in any way. Obviously, we're men ourselves. What we are saying is that men are in crisis, and we're going to give you some stunning statistics that support that contention. We also are well aware that there are many masculine traits that are so valuable to the world and to other men and, of course, to women and children. For example, strength, capacity to withstand hardship and be protective. Raise your hand if you have enjoyed that quality of masculinity, male or female, of course. Whoops. More technical difficulties, that's okay. Loyalty, dedication, commitment. Again, raise your hand if that touches you. Us too. Ability to solve problems and think logically. I know my partner appreciates that about me at times. And I, of course, appreciate some of her qualities. And the capacity to take risks, stay calm when in danger, and assert oneself. Again, if that's something that, yeah, exactly. So we have no interest in expressing love by doing things for others. That sense of mission, that sense of passion and compassion for the world and helping. Very, very powerful. These are out of Dr. Ron Levant's book, A New Psychology of Men. So the point is, we have no interest in saying that men are toxic. As Leonard said, there are some toxic behaviors, and the cost of them are horrendous. First, we'll talk about, anybody know the answer to this? Raise your hand if you can relate to this, men or women. Okay. So we put some humor in here, of course, along the way. All right. So we believe men are in crisis. The Me Too movement, of course, we're all aware of that today, and we talk about it in our book, highlights not dozens now, thousands of high-profile cases, sexual harassment, abuse, and rape by men in power. We believe that's not okay. Those behaviors are not okay. What is going on with my clicker today? There were 340 mass shootings in 2018, the exact count. That number of dead and wounded aren't totally tallied yet because it's so close to the end of the year, but approximately 400 killed, approximately 1,200 injured, and 25% of those shootings were in schools. All but one perpetrated by a man, a male. Now just think about that. Men commit suicide 4 times more often than women, and there are 35,000 male suicides in the United States every year. In addition, divorced men are 10 times more likely to commit suicide than divorced women. And we're not paying attention to a lot of these statistics. Before I move on to my next slide, just a personal story. Just yesterday, I talked to my brother who lives in Milwaukee. And he got very emotional on the phone. He said, my best friend who lives just across the alley, they've been best friends for years and years and years, drinking buddies, Packer fans, cheeseheads, you know. 48 years old. I had a party with him the night before last, and yesterday morning he shot himself in his garage in the head and killed himself. And he was distraught. He was distraught, and he didn't know where to go with that sadness. And he started to cry on the phone with me, and I said, Jeff, it's okay, let it go. He said, no, I can't do this now, I can't do this. Yeah, exactly. It's so difficult for men to allow themselves to grieve, just one example. And we got a lot to grieve. Men comprise 76% of homicides, victims we're talking about here, according to the Department of Justice. 93% of the prisoners in the United States are male. And this country incarcerates the highest percentage of its population of any country in the nation, in the world, I mean. 99.3% of all the executions in the United States since 1976 have been male. Think about that. Only 11 women have been executed since 1976. Now, we have many, many more statistics. We didn't want to depress you at your breakfast. The point here is that men are in crisis, and very few people are paying attention to it. One of the reasons we're writing this book is to point an arrow at it and say, hey, pay attention. We men need some help. We have some ideas for help that we're hoping to present with you today. So the question of what causes these masculine problems is what we're going to move into. Leonard?
Several months ago, the American Psychological Association came out with its first ever guidelines for boys and men. And they had 10 guidelines. And it was pretty amazing that they said that traditional masculine ideology limits and even harms men's mental health. And I want to go through some of the things that they cover, because it's pretty astounding to take a look at, well, the way we've been conditioned isn't healthy for us. And we're going to talk about why it's not healthy and then some of the solutions. So let's take a look at the next, what they pointed out. One is, here, think of some of the traditional masculine norms that we were taught growing up. Men must be invulnerable. Don't be weak. Just like Rick's brother, you know, if you're crying, don't be weak, tough it out. In therapy, it amazes me when men come to see me in therapy, the message that they got to be tough, they got to be strong. And when they come into therapy, I know that they've been in pain a lot longer than what they've said, because they've been holding on, trying to solve the problem themselves. It's a horrible ideology that we have to have. Be self-reliant, self-sufficient, independent, competitive, which means we shut ourselves off from other people. It means we have to solve our problem on our own. traditional masculine ideology devalues feminine qualities. Do you know, I'm going to be a bit crude here, but one of the common things or the worst things that men can tell another man is don't be a pussy. It devalues, imagine the devaluing of feminine qualities, of emotion, of connection, of relationships. But that's a message of devaluing. I just saw a client the other day, and he's very emotional. And he says, well, my partner says, I'm a chick with a dick. You know, so again, this is the devaluing that occurs of traditional, of feminine qualities, but is part of what we believe.
And that comment, by the way, points out how women carry some of those beliefs too, and project them onto men. So we all have a stake in this, right?
Be stoic, unemotional. I remember when my son was 10 years old, I lived in Australia for 14 years, and he was playing rugby. I remember one of the boys fell down, started crying, and I heard one of the fathers say, oh, give him a few years, he won't feel a thing. And that is the strong thing, is just don't feel it, particularly sadness, particularly grief. Don't feel, just be tough. But if you want to be aggressive and angry and even violent, that's okay. Somehow everything, the emotions can be channeled through aggression. Glamorize aggression. Even violence to portray masculinity. If you look at movies today, you see that there's a horrific thing going on or some evil perpetrator, but the solution is violence. All the superheroes. Superheroes solve problems by being violent, using their superpowers to overcome injustice. And of course, you don't see superheroes crying or getting hurt. They just get punched around. And this is the be invulnerable. This is the kind of the motto that we're being sold about masculinity. Of course, don't be unmanly or gay. So that's gay. So for a man to be unmanly, somehow there is that message that as men, we've got to be a certain way. We've got to be stoic, Spartan, and really be out there in the world. And our self-esteem is based on performance. So we're successful because of how we perform. It's not necessarily about our relationships or our ability to be connected. It's our performance. And if I can perform well, it means somehow as a man, I am successful.
Just a really quick story about that. When I was about 18, 19, I asked my father once, who was in and out of my life, Dad, do you love me? And he looked at me incredulously, and he said, I've worked my fingers to the bone for 20 years to take care of you and your siblings. How could you even ask that question? So is love equals performance, equals work. Interesting.
And you know, the pain for this here is, I remember many years ago, I was a therapist in Australia, and a man came to me. He was a multimillionaire, very wealthy. He was very depressed. And he was depressed because his children, his adult children, did not want to see him. And he said to me, he says, Leonard, if I had to do it all over again, I would give up all my money just to have a relationship with my kids. And part of it is, if we're striving as men to continually perform and make money and be successful and high achieving, often the price that we pay is our relationships with our children and our partners. Now, all this socialization does limit our psychological development. Now, as Rick pointed out in that earlier slide, we have a lot of positive masculine tendencies. So the goal is not to eradicate those, but we want to have flexibility. So we can be strong and tough when we need to really persevere for going on a bike ride or whatever, but we also want to have the ability to be vulnerable and emotional in relationships and intimate. So we have the flexibility as men to be able to choose which particular qualities we want to hold on to. And the difficulty is that the traditional masculine ideology constrains our behavior, says this is the way a man is, this is how we're supposed to be with our roles, and that the traditional rigid masculine ideology just constrains our mental health. And that's what we're trying to take a look at. Well, what is the way for men, modern men, in the 21st century? Next slide. So here's some examples. Obviously, I love Gladiator. I think most men love Gladiator. Think of men's movies, like usually action, a lot of fighting, beating up. Chick flicks usually have to do with romance and love. But again, these are some of the models. Again, these are traditional models that we have. And if a man looks after a woman, well, he's got to protect a woman by defending the woman against any adversaries or whatever it is.
With a weapon.
With a weapon.
All right.
Now, Elaine Bozier said, I know what men want. Men want to be really, really close to someone who will leave them alone.
Raise your hand if you can relate.
We need our space. And the next slide.
All right. So how many of you women in here have had trouble communicating with your partner or husband or son? Oh, come on. There's more of you than that. Okay. This might explain it. We need to talk. You got our arms crossed, right? Okay. So the evidence that we're presenting here says that, in our opinion, clearly our old traditional models, as pointed out by the American Psychological Association, are not working. One of the unique perspectives that Leonard and I bring to the table is that he has 40 years of therapeutic experience working with men in men's circles, not just men, but a lot of men, and has run men's circles and been in men's circles that entire time. And I've had 30 years of working with men in a really deep level through the Mankind Project. I know we have a couple of men here that are part of that organization. All over the world, I've led hundreds of trainings with men in every culture. And guess what? It doesn't matter what language you speak, what race you come from, what continent you live on. Our issues are virtually indistinguishable. And they're very, very common. Okay? So it's not working. The old man box, the old traditional model. The cost of this ideology is simply too high, in our opinion. I don't want men like my brother to go through what he's going through right now, losing a best friend. Oh no, my brother sold that weapon that the man used to hurt himself to him. Yes, and my brother is a psychologist. Yeah. Now, what can replace the old model? So the message here is a different model. We call it the Classics model. Classics is an acronym. The word classics harkens back to those old positive qualities of the heroes of ancient times. And we're updating it from this book. And the model consists of 8 dimensions that lead men to healthy masculinity. Leonard's going to talk about the first 4 of these.
So the first one is, now again, you want to think of the classics. So C stands for connection. And for men is valuing emotions and relationships. Connection is a funny thing. Women connect really well. We have a hard time. Whenever I'm with other men, we say, let's do a check-in. And I know I've done that with some of my women friends. It's, we don't have to do a check-in. Let's just connect. But, we do a check-in. Well, what are we feeling? So, in our work, and often in men's work, it may seem strange, but we're learning about just connecting with our own emotions. And there's a lot of talk about emotional intelligence today, but emotional intelligence is really about being aware of all my emotions and having the ability to manage my emotions. Being aware of the emotions and the emotional relationship I have with others, and being able to interact in different ways. Connecting, helping men connect emotionally is really one of the first steps that is very important for us to do. And I know it really shocks me sometimes how the difficulty for us connecting. They did a study on college students, and one of the study demonstrated that girls who were depressed, when they talked to other girls about being depressed, well, you can imagine, they felt better. When boys who were depressed in college talked to other boys about being depressed, they felt worse. Because to be able to, this goes in, if I got to be invulnerable, but I'm talking to another guy about being depressed, well, how do we relate to each other? How do we relate to one another emotionally? And I think, again, the emotional connection is the first piece of really just getting connected other than anger, sadness, and grief. And kind of in our men's work, we always say your grief or your sadness is welcome here. Creating a place where our emotions are welcome, whatever the emotions are. And we have a lot of shame and grief and guilt often in our emotional lives. Connection also means connecting with relationships. Because men often, we can get very involved in doing our work, but actually connecting with relationships and really being able to establish relationships with our children, with loved ones, and with our brothers. Next one is love, sharing with an open heart. Now, the strange is that we often don't know about self-love, really taking care of ourselves. When we have health issues, we usually put the health issues aside. It's usually a woman, a loved one, a partner says, you really should go see the doctor. He says, no, it's okay, I'll take care of it. And really practicing loving self-care of ourselves. And there's a great poem by Rumi. Let me just think, the poem by Rumi. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers you have built within yourself against it. And that's really our work, to find the barriers within ourselves that we have built against love. Now, in our book, we talk about, obviously, there's romantic love, and with relationships, there's brotherly love. Now, there's a big passion for me, as I've talked with Rick, is fatherly love, because I was a stay-at-home dad when my kids were young. Back in 1984, when my kids were small, I stayed at home for a year while Mary Lou, she worked as a director of an organization. And I'll tell you, if of all the things in my life, whether it's writing book, being a director of an organization, of therapy or whatever, the thing that I value the most in terms of making a decision was spending that 1 year at home really bonding with my kids, because my kids are 41 and 38 today, and to this day, I have a very strong relationship with my kids because of that. And our goal is to encourage men strengthen that loving bond. The next one is authenticity, relating with accountability and integrity. Authenticity is about really being vulnerable. Now, the thing that really strikes me, we were in a circle the other week. In men's circle, to be in men's circle where we can practice really being authentic. We can really own our mistakes, really own when we fall down. That's not a very common circles that men have in traditional society. So I really value that. So if Rick and I and my other brothers in our circles, just to say, I screwed up this week. Wow, just to be authentic about what's really going on. We need to practice that more and more, and to be in safe circles where we can practice just really being authentic. And of course, trying to be men of integrity. A number of us here are in the Mankind Project, and I feel so grateful for men who have been committed to really try to be men of integrity and accountable to their words. It's just astounding. And then the last one is spirituality, connecting within and with others. This morning, I got up to take a shower. Rick got up a little bit earlier, and all of a sudden I hear this bong, bong. I says, hey, someone started my meditation app. As it turned out, we had the same meditation bonging, or whatever it is. For us, spirituality, for us as men, it's our very essence that we are spiritual beings on this human excursion. And the goal is to make decisions from within, connecting with our source, with our soul, so that we are spirit-driven, not necessarily performance-driven. Yes, we want to achieve and accomplish, but really our mission comes from being spirit-driven. And that's really what we're really wanting to help men. Find that spirit within so that we can really lead our lives from our soul. So Rick's going to take over. Oh, and then just finishing, sometimes we need more models, healthy models of men. So here's, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love.
So since it was Martin Luther King Day just a couple of days ago, we thought that was a beautiful quote. So, do you want to hear the last 4 steps of the classics model? Say yes, because I'm going to do them anyway. All right. So, we didn't think a book about men would be complete if we didn't talk about sexuality. And we put it in a way that's a bit juicy. Accessing juicy pleasure responsibly. So here we talk about the Me Too movement and many other things. And we encourage men to have open conversations about their own sexuality. It's one of the ways that we do not talk about this, except to boast and tell stories, most of which are lies.
Can I just say something?
Oh, please.
The amazing thing about sexuality with men, as Rick says, we rarely have serious, heartfelt conversations about sex with other men. It's really strange. You might think that we do, women, but we really don't. And it's so important for us to have a really honest, frank conversation about sexuality.
And since my partner, Michelle, is a sex coach, I don't get a choice. So the 6th of our classics, the I, stands for intention, and we look at that as creating a mission of service. Men have a natural capacity to want to serve the world, serve their families, serve their communities. I think women do too. And what gets in the way is that performance and all the other things we're talking about. When men are able to access that spiritual side, that emotional side, suddenly their mission takes on a whole different perspective. It's not something that I want to do, it's something that I have to do. And part of Leonard and my mission work is this men's work in this book. I have a mission statement I'll share with you very briefly. My mission is to create a passionately loving and peaceful planet by leading safe, sacred, diverse, healing circles. And I have the deep privilege of doing that this morning with you and with circles like this all over the world. It's phenomenal. And I get to live my mission today. Thank you for that. We want every man to have a mission. It doesn't have to be that big. It could be something as great as my mission is to love my kids with all my heart or love my partner with all my heart. Whatever calls to you. We want to support that. Community, building a circle of men. As Leonard pointed out, one of the traditional male ideologies is isolation. We do not know how to connect well with others. We can talk about sports. We can talk about politics sometimes without getting into battles. But talking about more, deeper issues in our lives is very difficult for men. So we have consciously and purposely created men's circles. And we support men not only becoming close to each other, intimate with each other, disclosing those things that we normally don't talk about, and getting support. It's changed my life. I've been in a men's group nonstop for 30 years now. I'm still in one that meets every week. And every week I'm not speaking someplace or leading a training someplace. I am there. We are privileged in our circle not to have just men now. We also have women in our circle, which is phenomenal. Give you a quick example of how this has served me. In 1991, my father, who had reestablished himself in a family, and suddenly we had become very close, suddenly, without any warning, died the day after Christmas, 1991. When I got word of that, I had just been with him the day before Christmas Day, and we even exercised together. I could not process that my dad had passed. He died of heart failure. And I was informed of that, and because I was in a men's circle, I knew what I needed to do. I wasn't going to do the stiff upper lip, oh, it's okay, I'm fine. I called my men's circle together, and this group of men who knew me and loved me and unconditionally came to my house. And we sat in a circle. You know what they said? They said, tell me about your father. And I began to share stories. And when I took a breath, they'd say, tell me more. And when I told the third or fourth or fifth story, I just collapsed in those men's arms, and they held me for hours. For hours. And every time I'd come up for air, I'd sob, I'd come up for air. Tell me more. That's how we support each other. And I've done that for dozens of men too. I don't know how many get through that kind of loss without that kind of support. Yes, we can turn to women for that. There's something qualitatively different about having men in my life who will do that with me and for me. It's changed my life. I've gotten through the passing of my mother now, the loss of 2 marriages, the loss of a son, only because of the support of those men. And I didn't have that before I started doing this men's work. And the last one, the last S, sovereignty, leading with your inner king. What does that mean? That means accessing the part of you that can be kingly, that can lead with grace, that can bless the realm being the family, the community, the world. We want kingly men in the world, okay? And if you think about it, you know who those men are. Most of them are icons, like Martin Luther King, or Nelson Mandela, or Harvey Milk. Men have stood for principle. They said, I put a stake in the ground, I will not move from this. And there are many, many other men, and of course, beautiful women too, who access their inner sovereign, the inner queen. So, those are our 8 classics model behaviors that we believe will help move men into a healthier masculinity, to help get men out of the man box, that will help defeat the damage caused by that traditional male ideology that the APA is recognizing. You with me so far? Is this making sense? Nod your head, say yes.
Rick, I want to nod my head too.
Yeah.
And I want to say, you felt that. I felt when Rick was telling his story about his father. And, you know, you can feel that. That feeling occurs when us men gather together and we start sharing our stories with each other. And there's an old saying that because we men came out of a woman's body, unless men feel connected to the world of men, we will always fear being engulfed by women. And so for us to be connected, really connected to the world of men, means we can really move closer into the world of women.
And there's also, I believe, a truth that as long as we denigrate the feminine on the outside, we men are going to also damage the feminine that's within us. The caring, spiritual, loving, emotional parts of ourselves. It doesn't mean that many of us don't have that. But many of us are stunted. And what our message is, it's time for men to expand our range. Expand our range out of the man box so we can go there if we need to. There's times when I need to be tough and strong and get through things. And there's times when I need to be soft and weak. When I can turn to my partner and say, I'm not feeling very strong today, would you just hold me? It's a powerful thing to do, not a weak thing to do, in our opinion. All right, so particularly around community, building a circle of men, Here's a circle of men we were in recently. You'll notice two handsome faces there and many other handsome faces. This was a training that was done in San Diego a few months ago that Leonard and I participated in and helped lead. Man, that bald head really shines a light, doesn't it? Whew. I need some makeup. All right. So, we actually finished a little ahead of time. That gives us some time for Q&A.
How much time do we have?
Oh, do we have a microphone we can pass around to catch your questions? How are we going to do that? Why don't we use one of these? Do you have another one, Mike? Oh, great. Mike's got the mic here. I know there's lots of questions. Yeah.
Recently, Notre Dame University covered up a mural of Christopher Columbus. And there's a lot of historical issues associated with the male Confederate heroes that we're dealing with. Your reaction to that? And how does that affect your movement?
Well, you know, I think the thing is, if I would ask you, who are your models of men that you would hold as someone that you would move toward? So obviously, like Christopher Columbus and whatever, they had, in their time, they had benefits in their time. I think the thing that a part of what I'm hearing is, in our time, who is modeling the new model of men? Who do I look up to? I surely don't look to Washington for models of masculinity that I want to ascribe to be like. Who do we really look up to? And I think what we're real, there's not a lot. I mean, the men that I look up to are the men in my circles, the men like Rick, the men who are in the Mankind, people who I associate with, but there aren't a lot of male models. If you look at the screen, television, the movies, those are the models that they're telling us we're supposed to be.
And I have a different response slightly. I don't think we don't take a position on that particular issue. However, I have a number of African American men that I'm very close to in this world, and they are impacted by those things in ways that I can't really understand fully. For example, the Confederate statues. I listen to them. I listen carefully because they share from their hearts and their souls what's been going on in their community for a very long time. And that informs what I do and how I think about it. We don't take an official position on it, but thank you for the question. And if you'd just say your first name so we know who's speaking, you're next.
Patty, I so believe in small sacred circles now. I think that's really what's up on the planet, and I do facilitate one. So my question is about your book. In it, does it have an exhortation of how women can help support men in coming into their true malehood? And I also belong to a Net of Light group, which is mostly older women. It was first called the grandmothers, but that was too limiting. And we pray for the planet every day, throwing over the net of light, which is a actual physical construct in the cosmos, for the empowerment of women to come into their true queenliness and the healing of men, because men are carrying thousands of years of subconscious guilt and shame for their actions on this planet. And it feels like that they're terrified now, holding on, because they know the ground beneath them is moving, because the beautiful divine feminine is rising.
The ground is moving under our feet. And when I talk to other men, I mean, there's a lot of, as we said, a lot of confusion. What we believed was our norm, the way we were supposed to be, man, I don't really know. And I am continually working on trying to be connected, be authentic. All the things that we cover in our book. We don't really address how women can help men in our book. That's going to be our next book.
Yeah, we have a second book, and it's about women supporting men. However, you raise a great point about what can women do to help men. You know, when we do readings of our book, it's often a very mixed audience, about 50-50. But you know who steps forward immediately to say, I want this book? It's the women. I want it for my husband. I want it for my son, particularly single women who are raising boys. I don't know how to raise a boy. Can you help me? So we do talk about how to do circles well, how to make them sacred, how to make them safe. Yeah, exactly.
You know, and Rick mentioned the quote in prison, 93% of the prisoners are men, 70% of the men in prison come from fatherless homes. So, I mean, that's been a passion of mine, is getting men more connected as fathers, and mothers can help men as fathers stay connected to their children.
And I've had the privilege of doing men's work inside prisons. And it is phenomenal to work with men who may never see the light of day outside those bars, who are still willing to dive in and do some work. Why? Because they're still fathers, they're still partners, they're still grandfathers, and they know they can do better. Okay? I see a question in the back. Let's get that mic back there, please. Would you do that, John? Thank you. You've had your hand up for a long time.
Well, I'm a mother of a 15-year-old son, so I really applaud your work. And I'm also very grateful for this cultural moment where we can have these conversations and be really honest with our boys about what it means to be a man. And so my question is really, how are you going to get this word out to young men? I mean, I think this is really critical. You know, it's wonderful if you can reach men who are, you know, of a certain age, but what about the young boys that really need to hear this now to learn this as they move forward?
That's a great question. What's your first name, please? Valerie. Valerie, thank you so much. 15-year-old, huh? Yeah. Wow. And you came to breakfast this morning. Thank you. Our book is not designed necessarily for younger men. However, the skills, all these things we've talked about, what they do is they help men become better fathers. I became a much better father when I started doing these things. When I started helping men learn these things, they said, wow, my boys are paying more attention to me now. So our third book, believe it or not, is on helping parents become better parents to young boys.
And I was just going to jump in. You know, the saving graces I see are millennials, because I see the millennials making really changes. I was on an airplane several months ago, and I was talking to this 26-year-old fellow about our book, and he says, you know, I really want to learn about emotion. So he kind of blew me away about his desire to really learn about himself and to be more emotionally connected and to be more connected in a relationship. I see the millennials, we're kind of doing work, but I see the younger generations, they're doing their own work in their own way.
Thank you. Can we get the mic over? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I am really proud of my work that I've been doing for the last 20 years with John Distrakash and our MKP group.
All right.
And one of the things I've learned and taken at a very deep level is tolerance and openness. And I was so shocked when I turned on the news, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, or I think it was Monday, and these kids from a Catholic boys' high school, white boys, were mimicking this Native American gentleman who was doing a tribal dance. Right. And they were just standing up there and putting them down and making jokes out of it. And I just thought, you know, there are so many areas in society where we've come a long ways, and then so many areas where we've almost regressed. And that's why I wanted to bring that up and see what your thoughts about that.
I saw that, and the question I had when I saw that, I says, where was the male mentor there to help steer these young men? That was my question. Is where's the older men who is there to be able to help them?
And I want to add something. I had compassion for the young men, believe it or not. Although I'm part Native American, I could feel the incredible tension. And the beautiful thing about that Native elder was he just kept drumming, just kept singing the sacred song. He didn't stop. He didn't stop. Because he knew if he'd stopped, there would be probably more conflict. Those young men were raised in that same man box. They were taught that that's an appropriate way to express whatever they were trying to express. And it wasn't just one or two, it was dozens of them from that high school. So, yes, please.
Okay, so there's some controversy about that. Yeah. The whole tape has now been shown. And were taunting by other people, and the drummer, he came towards those other kids, and the other kids were not necessarily making fun of him. And then this morning on the way here, I heard this was set up. This was a setup to do this thing where this clip was shown in order to make the division greater among us. So it's not all what it seems.
That may be true.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.